תודה יוסי. רק אומר שההערה של נציגת משרד החוץ פה הייתה בפירוש במקום, אם כי צריך לזכור שחלק מהעבודה, אם אני לא טועה, היא גם מתנהלת בהתנחלויות ובפארקים התעשייתיים של ההתנחלויות. זאת אומרת, זה לא עבודה בישראל פרסה, אלא זה מספר כולל, שהוא כולל גם חלק ניכר מאוד מהעובדים שעובדים בצד הפלסטיני בעצם של השטח. הדובר הבא, אני רוצה לומר גם מילה מקצועית וגם מילה אישית. מקצועית, הוא היה הרבה מאוד שנים ברשות הפלסטינאית, הוא היה מנכ"ל משרד הכלכלה, היה תקופה מסוימת כלכלה ותעשייה לפני כן, לאחר מכן הוא מונה לתפקיד שהוא אקוויוולנט לסגן שר הכלכלה, אדם ששנים רבות עסק בנושאים האלה הכלכליים, ובשנת 2007, am I right, Saeb, 2007? שנת 2006, נכון, בינואר 2006, כשהממשלה של החמאס מונתה, הוא סירב לשחק את המשחק ונטש את הסקטור הציבורי, ומאז הוא עוסק בכל מיני נושאים, כולל בנושא ייעוץ, וכולל בהיותו אחד משלושת חברי הסטירינג קומיטי של הקבוצה הכלכלית שלנו, קבוצת אקס. ובמישור האישי אני רוצה לומר שהוא אדם יקר לי מאוד, ולא רק לי, איש אמיץ בצורה יוצאת דופן. עצם העובדה לבוא הנה היום לדבר באוניברסיטת אביב זה לא דבר קל ודבר שמה בכך, הוא לא היחידי, יהיה לנו עוד דובר. זה אנשים שמאמינים בשלום, מאמינים בשותפות, אבל עושים את זה כפטריוטים פלסטינאים מהעמדה של תקווה לסוברניות, לעצמאות, למדינה שתחיה בשלום עם מדינת ישראל. ואדם מאוד מאוד כנה והגון, ובאמת פרטנר גם ברמה האישית וגם ברמה המקצועית, שאני הייתי מאחל לכל אחד שיהיה כזה. אז Mr. Saeb Bamia, I hope it wasn't translated, and please sit.
Well, Samira clearly always encouraged me to come. Well,
לדברי סטלין שאמר על האפיפיור כמה דיוויזיות יש לו, אפשר לומר על החבר היקר
שיש לו הרבה דיוויזיות, כן.
יש לו, אז למה אתה לא מגלה לנו?
זה סוד.
well, I didn't understand what you said, but anyway, sometimes it's difficult when you are listening to previous speakers and they covered a lot. And I was impressed from what I listened. Facts, many facts today, neutral, honest and objective. But something was missing, some analysis, reasoning, and I will try to say what was not said. But of course I was preparing something, but now I'm not going to keep what I plan to present, and with this audience, and I want to speak from my heart. And allow me to start with a political statement. Even I always escape from politics, but unfortunately, this conflict is a political conflict. The Palestinian people, as any people in the world, have the right for self-determination and the right for independence. This is not a question. And again, we don't need to go into an exam to prove to ourselves to have the independence. We will get it. And this occupation will end, if not during our generation, the second generation to come. We believe in peace, and we want peace to prevail because it's against the interest of all. And I believe the victims are first and above all the Palestinians and the Israeli. Because I have many Israeli friends and I'm proud of my friendship, I believe in peace, and I want to live together with my Israeli friends, with my Israeli neighbors, in a different concept of relation. And the control which was repeated today, it's time to reconsider. It's time to use the concept of cooperation, reciprocity, fairness, which was used in the umbrella of Paris Protocol, but unfortunately never implemented. Again, the main issue when we want to focus on lessons learned after 19 years, speaking about economy, but everything is related to the mindset of the occupying power and the control. And again, the serious challenge for the Palestinian Authority, and if I'm allowed to say, the worst of my life experience when I was in the Ministry of Economy, to discover in early times, in 1997, 1998, that there is no chance under the occupation during the interim period for the Palestinian public sector or private sector to succeed in any potential economic development. It was a clear Israeli policy, and it was reflected in all the Israeli measures for political reasons, and because they don't want the Palestinians coming to the final status situation and have a strong card in their hands, because success in economy give you a strong card for sovereignty and for independence. But again, why? What happened and make it impossible, even from the early times, for Paris Protocol not to succeed? The main reasons were that there was not a goodwill, a political will from the Israeli side to implement the Paris Protocol when it reflects the interests of the Palestinians, when it will increase the potential of the Palestinians to plan in a way where they can be able to implement what they plan, where they can control their economy, where they can control their natural resources, where they can be able to diversify their trade, where they can be able to reach to a serious economic development. The comparison which Isaac did between Jordan and Palestine, and what the Palestinians didn't do in order not to be able to apply and to reach to the goals the Jordanian reached. We started free trade agreements before Jordan. We could achieve in 96 free trade arrangements with the United States. In 97, interim association agreement with the EU. There were 15 countries, there are now 27. Free trade, of course, and beyond free trade. We could achieve free trade agreements with EFTA, 4 countries. We could also achieve a free trade agreement with Turkey, and we could achieve to be members in the Arab Free Trade Area. Lately,
It's not only could, you did achieve.
yes, we could achieve. We were able to achieve. And we were never able to utilize all these agreements. There is something missing. The Jordanian exports, and they signed the free trade agreement with the United States in 2001, 5 years after we achieved the free trade arrangements with the United States. The Jordanian exports reached to $1.4 billion a year. The Palestinian exports to the United States in its best time didn't reach $5 million. The same experience with all the arrangements, not because we are not able, not because we cannot compete, because the Israeli measures, the Israeli factor, which through impediments and restrictions created what we call serious increase in the transaction cost of our trade, which goes beyond the customs, beyond the preferential treatment we are getting from any of our free trade arrangements with all the countries we did. Such impediments started and continued, and until today, we are still considering the best reference, the World Bank report in December 2004, which was presented to the HLC meeting, endorsed by all the donor countries, and Israel participated in this meeting, where they mentioned 12 requirements from the Israeli government. If implemented, the Palestinians will be able to start the economic recovery, not the economic development, the economic recovery. None of these 12 requirements is implemented until today. I don't want to go into details of restrictions, impediments. I want to show that the status quo cannot continue. My friends and colleagues, the previous speakers, explained the situation, the GDP per capita, the unemployment, poverty. 26% of the Palestinian individuals are suffering from poverty. 13% are suffering from deep poverty, according to the World Bank latest report, March last month, 2013, which was also presented to the HLC last month, which was held in Brussels. So this status quo cannot continue, and in order to change this status quo, there should be serious action to be taken immediately. One of the first top issues is to look at the legal framework, Paris Protocol, which is not implemented, in fact, which is not there. All the Palestinian interests are not now reflected. So Paris Protocol should change yesterday, since the year 2000. And any concept should consider the Palestinian full control on their trade. Unless we are able to have our own economic policy reflecting the Palestinian people interests, and including trade policies, fiscal policies, financial policies, custom policies, and monetary policies, and be able to implement them. Unless we are able to control our natural resources. This issue of A, B, C is becoming ridiculous. The Palestinian, one of our colleagues was speaking about the Rawabi city, and we are proud of this project. But it took 3 years to get a permit to build a road in Area C to connect Rawabi city with Ramallah. And after the interference of Mr. Blair, the American, everybody who can have influence, and this permit is temporary for 1 year and should be renewed every year, or else the owner of Rawabi should destroy it on his coast. So it is really ridiculous even to put it on the table unless there is a serious change in the mindset, and unless there is a political will and understanding, and unless the Israeli public consider what is happening there and consider that there are links and interests. Security, it's in the interest of both sides. Prosperity is the interest of both sides. And put certain engagement and pressure to make a difference, the situation will not be controlled by anybody. Even the Palestinians are starting to questioning why this authority to continue. If there will be no change in the situation, if the status quo will continue, it's better for the Palestinian to take the decision to solve the authority, not to be there only for security coordination and for making the life of occupation easier and cheaper. And the other side is paying a tough price, and the private sector is dreaming now to have a normal business environment. All governments are taking on their shoulders the responsibility to create the enabling business environment. The Palestinian dream to have the normal business environment in order to be able to start the process of economic recovery. And that is the serious challenge. Now, how can Paris Protocol be changed? Palestine should be a separate custom territory. The structure of Paris Protocol, not only the envelope, this custom envelope, custom union should be forgotten. And Palestine should be a separate custom territory. Can it happen immediately? Yes, it can. If there is a readiness from Israel to cooperate and to give the Palestinians a potential. Even I believe that unless there is a political solution and unless there is a final status agreement, the assumption of economic development is not there. But at least the assumption of economic recovery can start as soon as possible if the Palestinians are able to control their trade, if the Palestinians are able to have their own custom book, if the Palestinians are able to collect their revenues, and there are means and ways to start immediately to control our trade at Alambi and Rafah, to have a custom unit in Ashdod and Haifa, and also at the same time to have our inland custom clearing houses. If anybody have any experience with Jordan, at the border, only they check the paper. Everything related to clearance is done in Amman. In many countries in the world, there are inland custom clearing houses where you can control your imports coming transit, if even from Israel or from Jordan or through Jordan to the inland custom clearing houses where the Palestinian institutions will be responsible of all the process of clearance. There are means and ways where you can immediately give the Palestinian the authority to control their trade, the authority to collect the revenues. We are losing every year between $300 and $400 million as fiscal leakage, because the indirect imports are going to the Israeli treasury instead of in principle, the last destination should receive the revenues of the imports. This is not the case until today. With even who is the weaker economy and who is the stronger economy, and we are losing even our revenues. So again, it is important to come up with concrete, practical ideas starting yesterday in order to make it possible for the Palestinian to start the economic recovery. The other issue which was mentioned by Mr. Belen, another transition, which I believe it is we can consider in practical terms economic issues to be addressed immediately. But regarding another transition, politically, I will leave it for the Palestinian politician to discuss it, but we are fed up from what was supposed to be 5 years transition, and after 19 years to listen again to consider another 2 or 3 years which may survive for 20 or 30 additional years. But in economic arena, there can be certain arrangements immediately, especially control of natural resources in Area C, especially the infrastructure projects in Area C, which under now the civil administration control, and they need permit, and you can wait for the next generation to get the permit. And it is also important to consider transit arrangements between Israel and Palestine, and to change the concept of back-to-back. And everywhere in the world, there are new technology, there are scanners, even containers to pass. Until today, any movement of goods between Palestine and Israel, between Palestine and Jordan, it's pallets, reload, upload, reload, and to another truck on the other side, which are behind the reasons of the increase of the transaction cost. There are certain bottlenecks which should be addressed, going back, believing that there is a chance for reciprocity, mutual interest, and fairness, and believing that the Palestinians have the right for fair competition. Fair competition is one of the first principles of the World Trade Organization. Israel is one of the founders, one of the countries who joined in day one the World Trade Organization, and Israel is behind making the Palestinians unable to compete. So if we are not ready to respect the international law, the human rights, the international humanitarian law, let's start respecting the international trade law and the multilateral trading system, and respect fair competition, as I believe you believe in open markets, and give the Palestinian private sector the same opportunity the Israeli private sector is having. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Bamia, and I think that we are immediately moving towards the next session, and I would like again to thank both Professor Zaira and Saeb Bamia. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to have closing remarks, so we will omit it. And thank you also for the organizers, and please, Shimon.